Minnesota, this is Christie Thompson with Christie Legal. I am a divorce and custody mediator and paralegal here in Minnesota. Happy International Women's Day. I'm going to bore you with just a tiny bit of history about women's rights in America. And so in 1848, New York was the first state to declare that married women could own property. And it wasn't until 1900 that married women in all states could own property. Unmarried women could own property, at the time of the founding of our country. However, most women did get married and then they lost their rights to own property. Their husband, it wasn't until I believe it was like 1920 that is like the husband had to approve what the wife did, and then she could do it. That's pretty crazy when you think about the fact that most women, do own property, at least a vehicle. Many women own houses and businesses and commercial buildings. And so we've come a long way, ladies. And we didn't have the right to vote until 1920, and that is with the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. So that's my little bit of boring history because I used to be a teacher. So, again, Christie Thompson with Christie Legal, and I have a panel of all ladies tonight here with me, and we're gonna help you get divorced with less conflict, less cost, and in less time. And how about you guys please do like a little 1-minute intro and alphabetical order, first names.
Hi, I'm Cathy Hietala. I'm with the Terrio Group, and we help people with their financial investments and help you with your finances through your divorce. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Heather Stumbo. I am a realtor on the Jason Gorman team at Keller Williams, and I help people, move on and start their journey after a divorce and find a new home.
And I am Tammy Wagner. I'm with Homeowners Financial Group, and I help people with purchasing homes, doing the financing for it, or for leveraging the equity in their home. Usually in the case of divorce is to pay out the other party that owns the home.
Awesome, thanks. And we will see if Sarah Cenard can join us tonight. She has a little holdup, and she is a life and business coach. She uses the Gestalt form of coaching, which uses horses. And so if she does pop in, then you will probably see a graphic of her horse, and I forgot what the horse's name is. As a divorce and custody mediator and paralegal, I work with both parties, and I help both parties divide the assets, divide the debts, and figure out how to share the children. And so as a paralegal and mediator, I don't advocate for either party. I just, tell you folks what the laws are in Minnesota, and then we work towards agreements that are based on those laws and common sense. So when we're dividing property in Minnesota, you're going to put all the property together, and then you're going to try to have both parties walk away with about 50% of the total assets. So the assets would include your home, your vehicles, your recreational vehicles, jewelry, your financial accounts, including retirement and investment accounts, even your HSA account, and plus all the things in your home. So we're gonna list out like all those things, and then you guys are gonna tell me if you already have an idea about how you wanna divide them, and then we're gonna look at, how it actually does divide out. And if it divides out that one of you is walking away with 70% and one of you is walking away with 30%, we're going to be like, yeah, that's not good, probably. Let's do something to make that more equal. And And then we, find out, what is the priority to you? Do you want to keep your retirement fund because you feel you earned that? Or do you want to stay in the house because you just really love that house? And so you want all of the equity in the house so that you're going to have a greater chance to be able to, get your own mortgage and continue to own the house. Whatever your priority is, that's what we work with. And then dividing the debts, the law is based on the ability to pay. And what ability to pay means in regular people terms is how much do you earn versus how much does the other person earn. So if one spouse earns $100,000 a year, and just for simplicity, the other one earns $50,000 a year, that means the one who is earning $100,000 a year will pay twice as many or twice as much of the total debt. Total debt means both parties' debt incurred during the marriage. Yes, that includes student loans that were incurred during the marriage. That includes gambling debts. That includes tax debt. That includes if you signed for a student loan or a car loan for your child. That includes everything. And now if folks want to, reach an agreement where, a party who doesn't earn more than the other party is taking more of the debt, and both parties agree to it and will state it under oath, then that might be possible. And then sharing the children, there are two types of custody. There is legal custody, and that is who gets to make decisions about the child. 95% of the time, it is joint legal custody. We have an intrinsic right to parent our children and make decisions about our children. And so when we have either a divorce case or a custody case where the parents are not, or the custody case would be where the parents aren't married, but they created a child, 95% of the time, it will be joint legal custody. Then the other type of custody is physical custody, and that is where is the child physically on each day and time of day of the week. Now, there's a lot of different ways you can do custody. You can get really specific, or you can be very flexible. Some clients that I'm working with right now, their work schedule literally changes every month. They're TSA agents, both of them. And it's like, whoa. So we're going to have to write, that custody with literally saying like, well, dad will have the kids at least one day a week. Some weeks he'll have them 2 days a week. And, the schedule changes every month. And that's all we're going to be able to write. And but there's two types of physical custody. One is called sole physical custody, which is actually a misnomer because nobody solely or only is that child's parent. So really, sole physical custody just means that one parent has the children more often than the other parent does. And then there's joint physical custody, and that's where both parents have the children about 50% of the time. There's a lot of different ways to do joint physical custody. You could do 2-2-3, where 2 days of the week the children are with one parent, then 2 days a week they're with the other parent, and then every other weekend, Friday through Sunday, they flip-flop. That's a pretty common one. When the kids are older, some people like to do 1 week on, 1 week off. Basically we designed something that has the best interests of the kids in mind, works with your family and your work schedule. And so that is the legal stuff about divorce and custody. And there's a lot more to it than just the legal stuff. So let's have Heather start by talking about buying and selling your house during divorce or separation.
When you're going through a divorce, it's an emotional, hard time. And so it's really important to figure out what you're going to do if you own a house. If one parent is going to keep the house because that's the home where the children have always lived. And so you need to, determine, can one person afford it? Or do you need to sell the home? So there's a lot of things to look at when you're looking at what you're going to do next. So if it's determined that you need to sell your home, it's important to get an agent that can come in and help you and just look at it as a business transaction and kind of help you take the emotion out of it, because it really does need to be separated. And it's important, that you have somebody that can communicate with both sides, because a lot of times there's going to be a lot of tensions and disagreements going on. So it's really necessary that you have somebody that can talk to both of you and be neutral and just help you get the home sold so that you can move on. You have to look at, like when you're selling the home, you want to not advertise that you're going through a divorce, because a lot of people will come in and be like, well, shoot, then we can, offer them less because it's an emergency for them to get it taken care of or whatever. So it's really important that you just proceed like you're just selling your home, and nobody needs, they don't need to know what you're going through. And then, you also what I do is help people, when they've gotten through that part of it, just to find like where they're going to go next and what the next step is, because you have to look at, where your kids go to school and how, when you have children, how you're going to co-parent and go back and forth, because that all needs to work, with schools and everything. So it's really important to find, a home that will still work with your new normal and your new schedule, getting people back and forth and everything. So that is what I help with.
Awesome. Thanks, Heather. And Tammy, could you please tell folks about how you help them during the divorce process?
Yeah, the divorce process can be pretty much 3 different options. But sometimes in the divorce, it's decided that one of the parties will remain in the home. Typically at that point, there's usually an order to, if there's equity in the home, that the other person that's leaving the home might get a payout. So we do cash out refinances in order to get them that payout. So that's the refinance. Sometimes people will sell the home and they need to purchase a new one, or maybe both parties need to purchase a new one. So then in that instance, I would pre-approve you. I do recommend, before you have the divorce final, that you do talk to me, just so I can make sure that you're well set, just so you're well informed, you're going into the divorce, knowing if you're going to be able to afford a house, if any support is going to be needed, if that's an option, So I do recommend that you talk to me about that. And then once in a blue moon, you will get people that will still cohabitate in the home. Maybe there's children involved, or maybe it's just cheaper for them too. And so once in a while, you'll see that. So those are pretty much the 3 scenarios. So as far as what I could do would be the refinance or the purchasing of a new home.
And Heather, could you tell us a little bit about how housing values are right now, and kind of like the craziness that's the housing market is right now?
Oh my goodness, it is really crazy right now. Inventory is very low still. So people looking for homes, especially under about 300,000, we're finding that something goes live on the market and you have multiple offers like instantly. Within hours, there's multiple offers on homes, and it's unbelievable right now. So you really have to be prepared, do a good job, talk to Tammy and know what you can do, because you really need to have a good grasp on, this is what I can afford, and you get pre-approved. and go into the market knowing that, it's going to be a challenge in a lot of cases. Unless you can afford a higher end home, then they're much easier to find. But yeah, right now inventory is very low. Home values are high right now, so it's an interesting time for sure.
And Tammy and Heather both, since people are often having to pay more than the market value for the home, what's going on with that? Like, what are the consequences of that?
Well, right now, if people are paying a little bit more, because they are bidding like $30,000 over the asking price sometimes, and the consequence is right now that it's difficult for people to find, what they think they can afford, because sometimes they have to look less, and we're starting to worry a little bit about appraisals coming back, because there's a certain point that, it's just not, it's not doable. So it's a little tricky.
Yeah, I've been finding the same. Like Heather said, we're watching those appraisals. So far, it's, they seem to be coming in. I personally haven't had anything over 30. I think maybe 10 or 15,000 was, in that case, the person had the funds to bridge the gap, which is a rare commodity. Or they go back and negotiate on that. Maybe the buyer does come up with more funds. So let's say if they went 10,000 over price and the appraisal came in 10,000 lower, maybe they split it. Maybe that's an extreme. Maybe a smaller amount would be more reasonable to say. But a lot of people are hopeful that as the spring market comes, that there will be more coming out on the market. I've heard a little bit on that. So we're keeping our fingers crossed that there is going to be some opportunities for buyers. I personally like to call the selling agent, reach out to them, let them know that, it's just not a pre-approval off of an online application, that I've actually reviewed the credit, I've reviewed the bank statements, I've reviewed pay stubs and W-2s, to let them know that it's a strong borrower. So some of those things could help you get an offer accepted. Working with Heather too, not asking the seller to pay closing costs or contribute funds if you can get away with that. A lot of times I'll try to bridge that with down payment assistance programs. That's great for first-time home buyers. A lot of people don't know that if you are selling a home and you're not making much money on it, there is down payment assistance for those people that are not first-time home buyers too. So don't feel like, if you just bought a home a year ago and you're not going to get hardly any money out of it, especially if you're splitting the proceeds with someone else, there can still be options to purchase again.
Awesome. And that was a lot of information there. I hope everybody was taking notes. So
unplanned really.
And so Cathy, can you talk about how you help people, first of all, understand the financial choices that they have to make during the divorce process? And then later on, we'll talk about the other thing that you do for people who are divorcing.
Okay. Yeah, so helping people through divorce, we can help people before they start the process or when they're thinking about starting the process, as they're going through it, and then help them individually once they've been through it. It's important to get started on the process as you're getting the divorce, because we can really show you side-by-side comparisons on different options and different ways that we can divide the funds to make it fair and equitable. And there are certain things that you really should watch for, we can help you move IRA money or 401k money. You want to make sure that you don't take that money out, especially if you're under 59 and a half, you'll be taxed on it and penalized on it. You want to make sure that you transfer the money over. You want to make sure that you transfer the money right away, and don't just trust that your spouse is going to continue to control it for you. You want to make sure that if he's going to give you half of that 401k, move that over. you're in control. Now you're in control of your own life. Today is National Women's Day. It's your day and you can do it. And we're all here to help you. I have an amazing group of women here that are all watching out for you. And I can go on to say, follow up a little more on the housing market. Is one of the fears right now is if you're getting a divorce, somebody decides to keep the house, the other person wants to buy a house. You want to be careful if you have to bridge that gap and pay more, not to take that from your retirement money because of the penalties you can incur on that, the loss, the taxation on it. And there's different limitations to different IRAs. Your employer with a 401k may have limitations to what you can take out. An IRA has limitations. If you're in a simple and you haven't been in that simple for 2 years, you can be taxed at 35%. So you really need to look at different options before you just pull money out of an IRA to bridge that gap. And then what was the second part you wanted to ask me?
Actually, I will ask you about that a little bit later.
Okay.
And what Cathy was just talking about, how you need to understand all the consequences of your financial decisions, is exactly why I always ask my clients if they would like a referral to a financial advisor, because I am not one, and they are not one usually. And most of my clients don't have financial advisors, but they have financial accounts. And you really do need some advice to help understand what you have and then what you could do with it. And so Sarah is able to join us. And so I will let Sarah introduce herself. But for now, Sarah, why don't you tell us about how you help people when they're deciding if they're going to divorce? Can you talk about that first?
Absolutely. I'm Sarah Cenard with Fusion Life and Leadership Coaching, and I'm a life and leadership coach. And so everything that I do is leadership based, and we need leadership in all parts of our life. And I'll tell you what, we really need it when we're shuffling the deck about whether we stay in a relationship or not. We really need to think about our leadership skills and how to lead ourselves through this whole journey. And so, everything that I do helps with that kind of decision-making process. And as well as once you've made the decision that I am going to go through with this divorce, and, raise your hand if you've been there, done it, right? Then you have grief to deal with. And so a lot of what I do is help people through the grief of the loss of the relationship, the loss of the dream, the loss of the idea, the loss of the expectations. There's a lot of loss. And so I have a lot of tools that I use to help people through that. But the biggest tool is within yourself. So, I believe that all our wisdom really comes from within. And my job is just to ask you questions to bring the wisdom out that you already know. You don't know, you know. So we discover it together. And we do it through a lot of different tools. One of them is with horses sometimes, but also through phone coaching and different assessment tools and things like that I can offer. But again, it's all in here. All I do is ask the questions to help you find the answers. That's my job. That's it.
Well, that's a lot though, because if we're stuck and not deciding like if we want to stay in the relationship or not, we could remain stuck that way. I have helped people who were not in love for over a decade get divorced.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you what, in some situations, people feel stuck for a lot of really understandable and good reasons. I was in a very abusive relationship, and I know what it means to be stuck and scared. I was an interim executive director for CADA here, which is the Committee Against Domestic Violence Advocates. And so I saw a lot of people in a lot of really scary situations. And, that's not always the case, but sometimes it is. And people get stuck in those situations and they get pigeonholed into, I'm not good enough, right? I don't deserve to have a good life. I am doing something wrong. It's all about me. And guess what? It's not. It's not. It's not about you. It's, well, it is about you. It's about your happiness. And that's, that's as a coach, that's my job, is to help you find your health and happiness and safety. So.
Yeah, CADA is a great organization in the greater Mankato area. And here in the Twin Cities, organizations that help women include Tubman, and there are lots of other ones. Tubman is just the one that I'm familiar with the most because I worked on several domestic abuse cases from Tubman when I used to work for attorneys. But thank you for sharing your personal experience, Sarah. I know that was not easy. And oh, it was a piece of cake. Okay.
At this point, it's we are the sum of our parts, aren't we? And that's part of what helps me do what I do.
That's very true too. Yeah. And so now let's switch over to how do we individually help ladies after they're divorced. And so I totally am out of the picture, except for if they're gonna change the ownership on the house from both of them owning it to one of them owning it, then I write the quitclaim deed and tell them how to change the title on the home. That's really about it, unless they're kind of squabbling after the divorce and one of them isn't doing what they're supposed to do and then they bring me back in kind of thing, which doesn't actually happen very often with the people who I work with because they're somewhat reasonable, but it does happen. So, but let's start out with Tammy. Tammy, could you tell us about how you can, because not everybody qualifies for the mortgage to either keep the house that they were living in together, or maybe they weren't the one who stayed in the marital home and they wanted to go buy another house, but they didn't qualify for a mortgage. So what can you tell those people who want to qualify for a mortgage maybe in a year or two?
Yeah, every circumstance is a little bit different. If it's credit related, I love to give them a plan. My motto is credit is a monster. Unless your life has gone absolutely perfect, it can be hard to figure out how to get your score up. So the main reason that I'm with the company that I am with is because that I can give them that advice. And typically, like last night I was working with someone and I said, you can do this, this, and this, but everything that I can see is going to take at least 7 to 10 months before you can get there. And I really valued being able to tell her and be honest with it, because then she can, sign leases. She can sign, she's not going to pay more for a month to month if she can do a 6 month or something like that. So for me, that's very important to be able to give somebody a plan. Maybe it's paying off certain debts. Maybe when that, if it's a lease on a car, look for something inexpensive. If the homeownership is the route that they want to go, or being able to refinance and being able to afford it, is the way to go. I really like to give them a plan on what can get them there. Other than that, I just totally enjoy when people reach out to me with questions. It's like that mom that says your kids never visit when they get older. So I'm always like, yay, they sent me this junk mail and wondered if it was right and it was a good deal, or something. Taxes, real estate questions, those kinds of things. Homeowners insurance, if they had a problem with billing, I like that. But for the most part, my follow-up is usually just getting them on the right track and staying with them and being available for questions.
That's super funny that you brought up that your clients will sometimes like come to you for other financial related things, because so I know you used to work at a certain bank, and I was at that certain bank today, and I was just getting something I needed to, take care of that I needed to, and I overheard a husband and wife and an elderly mom talking to the bank manager and saying that they wanted to meet with the mortgage banker because they wanted to make sure that if their mom became incapacitated, that that the house would stay in the family. And in
Ooh,
my head,
interesting.
I'm like, okay, like how would the mortgage banker handle that? And so I was like, I work in law, so let me ask you a few questions here. And then I got called to go take care of my thing, and I was like, oh, just a minute. And I came back and I asked them some question. I was like, okay, so yeah, you need to talk to Carrie Renner because Carrie knows like how to handle all this. And I think it might be a living trust. I'm like, but I'm not sure. And I'm like, but Carrie will know how to do that. And
Okay.
Carrie will have the answers to your questions. And so I was like, what? They're asking the mortgage banker that? And so, yeah, people do ask mortgage bankers interesting questions, and it happened today.
Yeah. Yep. I don't mind it one bit. I love being a resource. I feel actually like honored that they thought of me. So, and like you said, we've got such a great group of people that we can refer to. Why not get them to the right area? I guess that's how I would like to be treated if I didn't know something. So, like I said, I always like the contact. I don't want to close alone and never hear from them again. That makes me sad. So, yeah, always want to be there for people.
Great, thanks. Now, Cathy, could you talk about how you help ladies after the divorce?
Yeah, well, once we get you through the process and you're at that point, you're in your own place now and you got that moment and you're on your new path, your new journey. And one thing with me that's very important is building the relationship with you. And because when you become a client of the Terrio Group, it's not just transactional, you're going to be a client for life. So we want to build that relationship. We're going to work on finding out what's important to you. What are your goals and what do you want? And then we're going to help build a budget for you and make sure that you stay on track with that budget. You're going to have changes. Life happens. And we're going to work through those and continue to make sure that you're putting money away for retirement, for those goals, and still enjoying life. And what's the best way to do that? And I think that's the most important part about starting a new journey.
Awesome. And do you have any tips for people who are trying to improve their credit that Tammy didn't already talk about?
Yeah, aside, let's see, from paying your bills, which will help you do and make sure you do what you need to do to get those bills paid, whether it's consolidating or refinancing. What was the one thing that I had brought up? Oh, for some people, if you have bad credit, especially your children, if you have younger adult children, you can put them on your credit card and just not give them a credit card if you're worried about them spending it. And then as you use your credit card and pay it off every month, that will help build their credit. So that's one way of doing it. But you have to just be careful not to give them the card to let them go spend it. You got to teach them along the way that this is important, and how important credit is. Because if you're not earning a lot of money, or if you're self-employed and using a Schedule C, you don't show a lot of income, your credit is going to be so important when it comes time to get that house or that car. It's going to be a big part of it. Did that answer the question, or did I
No,
get
that's
something?
Yeah, and when you talked about Schedule C, that also made me think about, your credit that will help you. Like, say you want to start a business,
Yeah.
that's going to help you start a business too, because, a lot of people, when they're making a change in one part of their life, they're making a change in more than one part of their life. And so they might, get out of a relationship and then start a business.
Right.
And maybe they want to wait a little bit between those two life transitions, but maybe they don't. So,
Yeah. Might want to hit the ground running.
and talking about running on the ground, Sarah and her horse, I forgot what your horse's name is already. Could you talk about Casanova? Okay.
Casanova. He's one of them. Yeah, he's my guy.
If you could tell us how you help people after the divorce.
Absolutely. Well, with coaching, there's, therapy and coaching are two different things, but they're similar, right? So a lot of times people are a little afraid of jumping into coaching because it's like, well, I don't do therapy, like I don't do that. So they're similar, but they're different. And the one way that they're different is with coaching, we go, what's going on now and how do we move forward? And with therapy, we focus a lot on the past and kind of resolving what happened in the past and how that can help you move forward. So they work hand in hand really well. But in coaching, I focus more on what's going on now and how do we move forward. And it's not that we don't, because I do need to understand what happened in the past. I mean, that is really important, but we don't focus on it. We focus on now and forward. So I think that's really important for somebody who's gone through divorce, is focusing on the now. I'm not dying now. It's okay. And I've survived this far. So what's next? What's next? What's next? What is my next step? What is the next step? What do I want to achieve? Who's the next partner? I mean, people honestly feel really lonely after divorce, and it's understandable. And so, they're starting to reach out and maybe start dating. And, these days that can be a scary thing. I just met with somebody who went out on and ended up in a stalker situation because she kind of went a little too fast. And it wasn't too fast. I'm not judging. It was like, hey, this guy seems really great. But now all of a sudden, she's being stalked and having to do an order of protection and the whole bit. And so I think, kind of defining what's my checklist when I jump into another relationship. Are there kids involved? Do I want, how do I protect the kids in this situation? How do I protect myself? So what's the protection factor? And, where's my boundaries? And starting to understand that, because the boundaries are going to be different now. You've been through one relationship, And now you're starting to think about another relationship. And so understanding those boundaries is really important and important to think about and kind of actually write it out, spend some time on that, really think about it. And it's important for your own safety and your children's safety that you take it easy, because we get lonely. It's hard. It's hard coming out of a relationship and facing and especially young folks that come out of relationships. And they're like, oh my gosh, I don't want to live the rest of my life alone. Fear pushes us into situations that are fearful. If that makes sense. If we're afraid, we jump into things that become fearful. So stepping back, being aware of the fear, understanding it, and embracing it, and just being aware of it and being a little more cautious is good. Is that good enough, Christie?
That's really good, and it speaks to me a lot. I didn't divorce 11 years ago, but I was widowed, and so I hadn't been dating for 17 years. No, by the time I started dating, 18 years, and it was definitely a whole new ball game between the 90s and the 2010s, and yeah, I should have made, like you said, kind of like a must-haves and would likes chart before I started dating, because yeah.
Well, don't shit on yourself.
Right.
Right. No judging. We
Okay.
we do what we do, and what we try to do is not shit on ourselves, like should. No judgments. We just sit back and go, oh, isn't that interesting? Look what I just did. And move forward.
Yeah, I do need to switch my verbiage on that. What I need to say is, moving forward, I need to you create a chart of my must-haves and would likes, and I need to stick to it.
Yeah. Don't say I shouldn't have, or I should have, or I should have. Every time you should, you're judging yourself and you're just lowering your energy level. So, let's stop shitting on ourselves.
Does anybody else in the group shit on yourself? And if you would like to comment on that, please do so.
I have a specific one right now in mind, but yeah.
We are all human and we do it, but the more we're aware of it, the less we might do, right?
Yeah.
So just be aware of it. When you hear the word should, you're judging.
Yeah.
Yourself or somebody else or the situation, right? Absolutely. And that's struggling. When we struggle, we hurt ourselves, not anybody else.
That's true. And I really liked what you said about that after you divorce, when you're dating, that you need to think about how your dating is going to affect your kids. Because, I have, some people who I know who were raped by their mother's boyfriends. And so, you really just have to be so careful about who you have around your children. And, a man who is not biologically related to a child is going to be a lot more likely to do something harmful to that child. And yeah, cannot even say how much I support that statement that you made about that.
Yes.
And I'll tell you what, I was a very young mother. I mean, I had my daughter when I was 17 and raised her, went through college, and, you know, I mean, and yeah, I dated, right? Well, because I wasn't always married to her father. I was married to her father for 5 years, and then we divorced. And so I dated, and, you know, I just didn't understand all of I was very naive.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, anybody going through divorce or thinking about divorce or whatever needs to reach out for wisdom wherever they could find it.
I agree with that. Because I was divorced, actually, it's 20 years ago already, and my kids were very young, and it was not my idea. And, you know, I felt like at the time, I felt like I would never leave my kids, kind of like no matter what. And now, like my children who are now adults say it is the best thing that's ever happened for them and for me, because we moved on and we moved forward. But at the time, it was so frightening and, you know, just scary. And I felt so alone. I felt like people who, and I've seen this in a lot of relationships that have gone sideways. I feel like the people who cheat and like do the bad things in a relationship, it's almost like they have a manual because they say the same things and they do the same things. And it's so interesting. And you're left just like, what do I do? How do, you know, and you feel a lot of grief for the life you thought you were going to have. You know, but I would say that there's great life after divorce, and definitely reach out to people, because when I went through it, I mean, there's a lot of financial things that I wish I would have known to do, because I just kind of put my head down and went, okay, well, now I have 2 young children. I got to take care of them. So I just worked hard, and that's what I did. But I think it could have been a lot easier for me had I realized that there are people out there that can support you and help you through all of these things. So I would say to anybody going through this that, you know, reach out. There's a lot of help, and it is so important.
Yeah, and I think that's why we're here today, as we're trying to tell people, you know, that you can talk to us. I think everybody gives at least a complimentary discussion, can kind of tell you what to expect, and, you know, if there's fees involved, what that looks like. But get the advice, because this is not costing you anything to do, and it could affect you for a very, very long time. You know, maybe 10 years, maybe 20 years, maybe 50 years. But there is help out there, and I think that all of us are not just, it's International Women's Day, but we're not just, you know, bashing men. Sometimes it's the opposite way. But no, either way, there is help out there.
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback on you, Tammy, that whether you're male or female, you can be abused, and don't take shame in it. It happens a lot more than you know, and none of us are judgmental. I think all of us see it as you're starting your new life and you're bettering yourself. It's a positive.
Yeah.
What I like to say about my mortgages too, when people, you know, ask questions, I said, the realtor, the lender, anybody involved, we're going to be here for you now. And if you have questions going forward, but you're going to be living your life, you're going to be making those mortgage payments, you're going to be feeding your kids. So know that we're going to represent you, but you've got to do what's best for you and your family, if you have a family.
Yeah, and Tammy, thanks for saying that we're not bashing men, because I wanted to make sure that came out sometime, because it's, you know, we're like, yay, it's International Women's Day, but being supportive of women and being proud to be a strong woman doesn't mean hating men.
No, not at all.
It just
all.
means that we know that, especially with the right help, all women can be very strong and can make great decisions about their lives that affect them and their children and maybe their grandchildren. And so, we like guys. A lot of us are married or dating, and we have lots of guy friends and we have sons and stuff. So, so we all like you guys, but it's International Women's Day.
And I would say that some of what I've learned, in my 55 years, is that my best friends are male sometimes,
Mhm.
but they're the ones that support me as a woman, and not put me down as a woman. So, I think that's the thing that I really appreciate about my friends that are male, is they're the ones that, they get it.
Mhm.
Well, that's awesome that you have such great guy friends. I've heard, that a lot of women don't build up other women. And, that's really sad. And I think maybe that's what Sarah was kind of referring to. And that's super sad. And I hope that, ladies, that you're surrounded by a lot of women, friends, and family members who are supportive of your decision that you're thinking about or have already made. And if people aren't supportive of you and they think that you should stay in an unhealthy relationship, then, those are people that you can remove from your life. And, they're not good for your mental health. Maybe they're not even good for your physical health. And because they should want what's best for you and your kids, not just what looks good in the community. And regardless of race or religion or whatever characterization we have for people. I know in some religious groups or ethnic groups, divorcing is very taboo. And but I hope that you can still put your and your kids' best interests ahead of whatever the community that you identify with, whatever beliefs that community has. There aren't any questions on Facebook, so does anybody have anything else that they'd like to tell people before we end?
I just want everybody to stay safe.
Yeah, and that is more difficult, or has been more difficult as a result of the pandemic. I'm sure everybody's heard how domestic abuse has increased since the pandemic started. And historically, when there are tough economic times, domestic abuse increases because for some reason women seem to bear the brunt of negative economic times. So if you're experiencing that, know that it's part of a greater trend, and there are organizations that will help. CADA, CADA, in the greater Mankato area, Tubman in the Twin Cities, and Tubman has lots of various resources for you. Yeah.
Can I add one more thing? I think what keeps a lot of people in an unhealthy relationship is the fear of not having enough money to do it on your own. And a lot of times that's not the case. You really don't realize how much you have until you're on your own. And that's something that, if you're in that situation and you're thinking, well, I really can't do it, reach out to us. We're It doesn't cost anything to ask questions, and we can help you find ways to get there, and it doesn't cost anything. So reach out before you decide to stay in an unhealthy relationship because you don't think you can afford it.
I agree. And, again, free consult. I will definitely spend an hour with somebody to get them headed in the right direction that will help them figure out, if they're shuffling the deck, which way to go. And where do I go? What do I do? Where's my help? What can I do? That's what I'm here for.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone who tuned in today. And if you have any questions, we are all available for free initial consultations. As we've already said, our contact information will be in the video shortly. And I hope you have a great rest of this beautiful Minnesota night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, ladies.